第7卷，袁世凯时代1912至1916 Volume 7 The Yuan Shikai Era 1912至1916卷首语 Forward. This volume presents a panoramic account of Yuan Shikai's entire rule from 1912 to 1916, starting with the founding of the Republic following the peaceful abdication of the Qing Emperor. It fully integrates 4 dimensions: the origins of constitutionalism, domestic and foreign affairs, industrial economy, and intellectual culture. IT opens with a retrospective of the core debates between constitutionalists and revolutionaries from the late Qing to the early Republic, systematically sorting out the institutional competition between the presidential system and the cabinet system. It includes classic evaluations of early Republican constitutionalism by scholars such as Qian Mu, Zhang Ming, and Emmanuel C.Y. Su, as well as the proposal of Sun Yat-sen's five-power constitution and contemporary critiques. 中间部分涵盖了宋教仁的宪法实践和暗杀，以及 Sun Yat-sen and Huang Xing during the Second Revolution, the diplomatic struggle over the 21 demands, including Duan Qirui's assessment of 4-hour combat readiness and Yuan Shikai's leak to Britain and the United States for balance, and the legitimacy crisis of the Hongxian monarchy. The latter half focuses on the golden age of national industry against the backdrop of World War I, Zhang Jian's economic cause of saving the nation through industry, and intellectual chapters, the rise of the New Culture movement, Hu Shi's literary revolution, and the early voice of Liang Shuming's cultural conservatism. Rich in historical materials and presenting both Chinese and foreign perspectives, this volume not only restores the realistic dilemmas of strongman politics, but also showcases the comprehensive transformation of the economy, culture, and thought in the early republic, laying a complete foundation for Volume 8, Warlord Separatism and Social Movements. 第1章，宪制源流，清末至明初的2大核心论战。Chapter 1, Origins of Constitutionalism. 2 core debates from the late Qing to the early republic. 1. 立宪派与革命派的世纪论战。The century-long debate between constitutionalists and revolutionaries. 从晚清到民国建立，立宪派和革命派就建国道路进行了长达10年的思想斗争，为早期民国宪政奠定了基础。The revolutionaries, with Minbao as their platform, advocated anti-Manchu revolution, the establishment of a republic, and the complete overthrow of the monarchy. The constitutionalists, centered on Liang Qichao's New Citizen Journal, Zhang Jian, and Tang Hualong, insisted on constitutional monarchy, gradual reform, and avoiding civil war and bloodshed, arguing that China's populace was not yet enlightened and that a hasty transition to republicanism would inevitably lead to chaos. Zhang Ming, in reinterpreting modern Chinese history, points out that this debate was not a clash between the old and the new, but a struggle over paths. The constitutionalists, drawing on late Qing consultative assembly practices, possessed grassroots governance and electoral experience. The revolutionaries focused on national revolution and regime overthrow, lacking practical plans for institutional implementation. After the Qinghai Revolution, the 2 factions merged into the Republican political arena, with constitutionalists shifting to support order reconstruction and revolutionaries adhering to a radical parliamentary line. Their differences directly led to the fragmentation of early Republican constitutionalism. 2. 总统制与责任内阁制，制度路线的根本对立。Presidential system versus cabinet system, fundamental opposition in institutional paths. 在共和国成立之初，总统制与内阁制之间的选择成为核心的宪法分歧和袁世凯与革命者之间冲突的制度根源。总统以袁世凯、北洋集团和一些立宪派为代表，他主张行政集权和强大的总统制与中国统一治理的传统相吻合，以应对地方分离主义和权力真空。Cabinet system, championed by Song Jiaoren and the Kuomintang, it emphasized parliamentary supremacy, cabinet formation by the majority party, and a ceremonial presidency, using legislative power to constrain executive power and prevent strongman dictatorship. Qian Mu, in Political Institutions Through Chinese History and Outline of National History, sharply criticized. The greatest constitutional failure of the early republic lay in blindly copying Western systems without adapting to local conditions. The cabinet system relied on mature political parties and parliamentary culture, which China entirely lacked. Presidential centralization, in turn, lacked the legal legitimacy of traditional imperial authority, resulting in a failure on both fronts and rendering all systems meaningless. IMMANUELCYHSU also noted that institutional transplantation divorced from social structure was key to the rapid collapse of the republic. 3. 孙中山五权宪法的提出与时人评价。3. Sun Yat-sen's Five-Power Constitution, Proposal and Contemporary Evaluations. To reconcile Chinese and Western systems and remedy the flaws of the separation of three powers, Sun Yat-sen formally proposed the Five-Power Constitution in the early republic, adding examination, and supervision powers to the legislative, executive, and judicial branches, inheriting China's traditional civil service selection and censor systems. Contemporary evaluations were polarized. Supporters argued it integrated Chinese and Western governance, with the examination power preventing partisan abuse and the supervision power strengthening official governance, fitting China's national conditions. Critics, including constitutionalists like Liang Qichao and Zhang Dongsun, deemed it overly complex with unclear powers and responsibilities. With parliamentary systems still immature, the five-power framework had no conditions for implementation. Qianmu bluntly stated, "The five-power constitution was an ideal political design, not a feasible reality." The early republic could not even maintain basic parliamentary operations, let alone five-power separation. This design was not put into practice until the Nanjing national government era, continuing constitutional debates. For later generations. 第二章，民国建政，南北统一与权威真空的治理困局。Chapter R, Founding of the Republic, Governance Dilemmas of North-South Unification and Authority Vacuum. 一、清室退位与法统完整承接。一、Abdication of the Qing Court and Complete Inheritance of Legitimacy. 1912年，隆裕太后发布了退位诏书 and the Articles of Favorable Treatment for the Qing Court established a peaceful transition. Yuan Shikai became provisional president with North-South consensus, and the Beijing government fully inherited the Qing Court's territory, sovereignty, and diplomatic legitimacy, achieving formal unification. The New York Times commented on March 11, 1912, Yuan Shikai's inheritance of unified legitimacy prevented the empire's disintegration and is the only stable pillar of republicanism in the East. 2. 共和权威赤字，张明笔下的治理失效。II Republican Legitimacy Deficit. Governance failure in Jiang Ming's analysis. Jiang Ming argues that the early republic fell into a deadlock of authority vacuum. The traditional imperial hierarchy collapsed. Verified by Beiyang Army War Department operational archives and Tang Qihua's diplomacy of the Hongxian monarchy, this was the core reason the Yuan government abandoned full-scale war. 3. 谈判博弈，拒签第五号家主动泄密英美。3. Negotiation and strategy. Rejecting Article 5 Jia leaking to Britain and the United States. Yuan Shikai's team refuted each clause one by one and firmly deleted all core provisions of Article 5. Following Wellington Coup's advice, they voluntarily leaked the secret treaty to British and American embassies and the New York Times. 1915年2月15日 The New York Times 在头版发表了全文 Britain and the United States protested Japan's violation of the open door policy, forcing major concessions. The final Sino-Japanese Treaty of 1915 was signed instead of the full 21 demands. 4. 最后通牒与屈辱签约 Ultimatum and humiliating signing. On the 7th of May 1915, Japan issued an ultimatum. Weighing the risk of national subjugation against preserving sovereignty, the Yuan government was forced to sign, designating May 9 as National Humiliation Day. Yuan telegraphed the nation to endure hardships for revenge. Overseas scholars Quan He-yim and Emmanuel Cyhs both acknowledged weak state diplomacy had reached its limit of damage control, not unconditional betrayal.